Okay, this is a conversation that kind of took place over about 3 months. It was on an email kind of format. We had long talks. He was a liberal in California, but um, he started to go off into an area that reminded me a lot of the things that you would hear from the Hitler um, mob before the Nazis came to power, um, where they belittled and dehumanized one set of people, wanted to separate them, and that ends up to being an area where the Jews end up getting gassed as the final solution. Anyway, I start off in this part of the conversation. It's been going on for a while. So, September, either liberal or conservative, including Bernie Sanders' government, cannot enforce morality and fix the problem. His answer is they can try, or they can publicly shame everybody into going back under the rocks they came out from, that Trump not only lifted, but provided the equivalent of food, water, and shelter, plus directions back to civilization. And I'm continuing my argument. He kind of enters in every so often. That's the problem. They can't fix it all. They can do is force it underground, where it mutates and gets worse, while the rest think things are great until all of a sudden it explodes. That's what I'm saying. Do you want to fix problems or hide them and pretend? I want to fix them. That means you have to let the poison out, not hide it so it grows. I want to fix them. That means you have to let the poison out. Look at Matthew Shepard, Laramie, Wyoming, a gay man that died. Anyway, that's the beginning of my argument. The community leaders in Laramie said they were shocked that those two kids could do such a thing, that they couldn't understand how anyone they knew could ever do such a horrible thing, and said their community doesn't teach hate. If you think in short term, only thinking in terms of your lifetime and emotions, then it is impossible to believe such a thing can happen. Here's the catch. 1. Each generation has its own experiences and words. What they say and do in front of their children forms their worldview. 2. Parents, and in general adults, say what they think they should to kids, but kids have eyes as well as ears. They see how you treat and what you say to them and to others in front of them. 3. Each child has their own problems and thoughts, the language of their experiences. No matter what you say to another person, how they interpret what you're saying depends a lot on what shaped them, how they were raised, and the people they meet. 4. Teenagers have poor impulse control. They are just learning right from wrong, and they are exposed to hypocrisy from all sides. 5. Add liquor into the mix. That takes away what little control they do have. All of that goes into a tragedy, and all of it is ignored because we can't bother to think just maybe more is going on than just simple blind racism or intolerance. Violence is the end result. But we have a bad attention span, and we are so full of ourselves that we can't accept that others might see a piece we miss. His response was August the 30th, the next day. And of course he takes a little bit. I'm not as mindless as liberals seem to think, that the ones that are lost. They are the ones that are lost. That's what I put in an earlier comment. Better lost than having no place to be lost from, like the Republicans who spend their lives trying to take away everything without putting in something equal or better. That's the reason there will never be any poor Republicans. And if you'll notice on posts recently, now they're attacking the poor Republicans. But anyway, the party itself has been stated on the news that their target demographic of old rich men, which has never been the stated, is passing away right before their eyes. But if they keep on with their reactionary ways, that's all there's going to be, and eventually they'll die out from irrelevancy and being too far out of touch with the modern world, just like the Whigs before them and the Confederates before them. I hate to say this is me, But you're completely ignoring the problem. The only real fix is to not feed the flames of intolerance on both sides. His answer back was, or feed the flames on both sides in spades, and watch them both implode on themselves. This is where he starts to go into Hitlerism, which he doesn't realize. My answer is, look at the insanity of court cases over baking cookies for gay marriages. Exactly what did it accomplish? Let's see. You get the privilege of paying these people who hate you your hard-earned money and force them to smile to your face, while in their heads they despise you. The money you pay will then go to fund hate groups that would go further than denying you a cake for a wedding. On top of that, you have only given tangible proof to their perceived victimhood, so their kids will carry the hate to another generation. They have proof now. His answer back, and this is the sickening part, not if we get a hold of them first. Remember, like I said, Democrats own the school system, and the hospitals, and the doctors, and nurses, and the transportation, and the social services where they have them, and etc., etc., etc. The kids are with us a minimum of 8 hours a day. More if they have night, weekend, or holiday programming. Eventually they will start to see their parents' regressive and reactionary attitudes as the outdated concepts that they are, and will start to seek to spend more time with us to escape. Just like the Mormons and Amish and etc., etc., etc. Creating a new generation that is slinking in the dark while we feel good guys, feel society is ideal and old hatred is gone and only leaves us unprepared when the anger rises again, and probably much worse than it was before. His answer back, unless they get educated and vaccinated against it beforehand, like they are doing in Australia and Germany and Scandinavia. Remember, most viruses are alive, but sufficiently weakened version of the disease they are supposed to cause. If there's ever a culture that needs a vaccination, it's this one. That was in response to what I wrote earlier. And his answer was, see above, under vaccinations. And having to keep abreast of them just as you would for any virus or bacteria that morphs. Now, realize he's talking about conservatives, old people, not just conservatives, but old conservatives that need to be kept separated from their children. And this is in California. All right. This is continuing the argument that I was making about the Civil War monuments. Eventually, we won't teach history. This is me. Eventually, we won't teach history. Or if we do, we will teach it from the perspective of the morality we have today, never understanding how it gets so bad, except to say they were evil. A bumper sticker mentality. Which, like I said, Bill Clinton provided us the bumper sticker way of handling politics. Anyway, his answer back is, which is good in a way, and bad in a way. Bad in a way because then nobody will be able to see that part of the past of the prism it was intended, and be able to discuss and learn from it without being affected by it. That sounds reasonable. This is the part that goes crazy. Watch Brigadoon sometime. In a good way it is, because by the time they find it, their formative years will have long since passed, so they'll be able to look at it objectively, which is basically they'll be able to be indoctrinated enough by liberals to know what they're supposed to be thinking. It's just like any period movie, musical, or play. America, we need to put these things on a restricted list, like Europe, but widely available in the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia. For the same reason. People there have no emotional stake in the culture or society being depicted, so they can look at it objectively, just as we can look objectively without any emotional attachment to the Manchurian, Japanese, and Korean issues of the same period of the 18th and 19th century. Here's where I go into the Hitler argument. Hitler was a minor nut. certainly a danger to Germany, but no one else. It took 2 good men to do nothing to buy him the time to become a world threat and create the Holocaust. His answer back, which is exactly my point. If we let the 2 main parties to short themselves out and then each other out and implode on themselves and each other, then there wouldn't be any more reactionaries left to hold back progress and people could go on about their business. I have no idea how that had anything to do with what I said above, since I didn't say there were 2 bad sides. Anyway, I'm continuing my argument. That was Britain's Neville Chamberlain, who purchased a short-term peace at the expense of the blood of people unfortunate enough to border Germany. And Franklin Roosevelt, who instead of leading, knew America didn't want a war, so he ignored it until it was almost too late. This is his answer back, his response. Except, if we'd have entered what became World War II in 37 or 38 or even 39, Hitler's and Mussolini's and etc. fruit hadn't ripened yet. So the U.S. would have been seen as the provocator. I don't think so. And we'd have probably lost the war for picking on people. And this is my part. And we replayed this disaster again the last 5 years with both ISIS and Russia. I don't fear Russia. They are not fanatics. But Putin reminds me of Hitler, and he is playing for time. He got 5 years thanks to Obama and all of Washington, and thanks to media, wanting to hide how they convinced America Trump couldn't win and instead try and convince us that somehow Putin can manipulate enough liberal minds in just the right states to get them to forget that November 8th was election day. Because, by the way, only 60% turned out. 40% stayed home that were registered to vote, that could have voted. That's really how Trump won. He did have 35% of the vote. It just, who was going to turn out to vote? When you have 60% of the eligible voters out there that voted, 30% is really all you need to win. Not a surprise. His response was, that's because we bought into the hype and went home after the third quarter because it was 13-5 away team, not realizing the Pats would come from behind and pull off the biggest football comeback in 50 years. He is right in that regard, because that's what my argument was. If we hadn't have bought into all the hype, well, we'd probably be almost as bad off because we have Hillary. So, see, he didn't like Hillary either. That's why she lost. If Bernie Sanders came close to beating her in a rigged election, is it a surprise that, I mean, if you have half of your own party that doesn't like her, it's a good sign she's not a good candidate. And, by the way, she ran in 2008 and ran into the same problem. It's not a surprise that Hillary was not a good candidate. Anyway. But people don't understand, in the history of the world, over the past 300 years, no country on the planet has been able to get a woman president after a minority president without a break in between. That was my argument. The problem is, Obama was supposed to be the major change that we'd all been looking for. He was a minority president. We should give him a chance. And we did. And he forgot to become the president of the United States. He stayed the minority president. And that's not a racist comment. That's saying that the Democrats did not remind him that he's not a dictator. He needs to work with the other 535 people we elect and send to Washington, D.C. You don't have complete control over everything. My point is, this is my response. Liberals can hide as much as they want from the fact it was them and not Trump voters that bought into a lie, which was basically the mainstream media and all of Washington and Hollywood, that she couldn't lose. In a democracy, she couldn't lose. His response back, yep, but at least it wasn't as bad as the wool Reaganomics pulled over the Republicans' eyes in '84. What does that matter? Reagan did a good job. He actually left pretty happy. I don't know. I mean, maybe California has a different view of things, but they're nuts. So, this is my point. It was in front of our face for over a year that turnout was always going to be what decided the outcome. Conservatives understood we didn't lose ourselves in the insanity of prophecy commentary of the national media. And that is what it was, by the way. They had no reason to believe she could win in a landslide. It was a prophecy all along. And at every step of the way, he kept winning, and they kept insisting he's still not going to win. They were prophesizing. And if you keep saying things over and over again, eventually it might come true. Other times, it might not. The national media is not supposed to be the Psychic Friends network from the 90s. And they still are. Anyway. But the media only has the left that will still listen to them. And the left are so arrogant, they have to believe Russia can hack brains, since there's no voting booth that's been hacked. Because if that isn't the case, they have to face the reality. This outcome is because of their arrogance and assuming conservatives were just stupid and hateful. I didn't vote for Trump because I like him, or especially hatred Hillary, because the arrogance of leaders in this country who all sided, including Republicans, basically sided with Hillary Clinton. When you got all the most disgusting people on one side, is it a surprise that the other guy who's being attacked by all these disgusting people all of a sudden looks a lot better? It was common sense what was happening. The media, for some reason, could not tell you the truth that this was a divided nation. All they had to do was treat him like any other presidential candidate. And I find it ironic that basically it was feminism, their platform, feminism. It's what defeated Hillary. All they had to do was let the media come out and say the truth. This was a divided nation. Odds are 50-50 chance that they're going to win. That's all they had to do. And voters would have been known, we need to go to the polls and vote. That's all that they needed to do. And they couldn't do it. And you want to know why? Because it was admitted. It was admitted on MSNBC the next morning by Joe Scarborough, who now has completely lost his mind, and Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd actually admitted that they knew all along she could lose. But they couldn't admit it because they were afraid of being labeled feminist or misogynist. So that led them to overlook things that they thought they were seeing. That is exactly what the feminist movement's all about. You have to give them a hand up. You have to give them a special hand up. You have to treat them special. And because you got to make up for the bad that happened in the past. We didn't do anything to her. All you had to do was just tell the truth. And then she probably would have been elected. But because of the feminist view of things that we can't possibly admit the truth, that Trump had a chance to win, she lost. It was that simple. There's no Russia conspiracy. There's no need for a Red Scare to explain this. It's just the media who was constrained from doing their job from fear that they would be attacked for being a misogynist. And now they've spent 2 years driving us through this mess for no reason at all. Okay, anyway, his response. Those exact same people have only been given token attention for 50 years. Only difference anyone between them and now is they are telling you out loud that you don't matter in the long run. Like trying to be Republican in California or Democrat in Texas. One is always going to flop blue and one is always going to flop red, and that's the way it's always going to be. So see, he basically ignores my entire argument, which is kind of what a narcissist does. They look at you in your face, they pretend to be listening and be reasonable, but then they completely ignore what you said, and then they just turn it around like you've agreed with them. It's insane. And he goes like this, it touches on a whole other discussion about the Electoral College that your boy campaigned against because he was so sure Hillary would get it, and then looks all flabbergasted on TV when he gets it. He always knew he was going to be running based upon that. Hillary should have too, by the way. If she had tried to get more than 51% of this country behind her, maybe she would have won. Think. I mean, before Bill Clinton, you used to go all over and campaign. Every state mattered. You did as many of those states as you possibly could. You tried to get every vote you possibly could. Instead, Bill Clinton, he targeted certain areas. And because he won, that's what George W. Bush did. He targeted certain areas. And when you got two parties playing the same game, it works out just great. However, Donald Trump grew out the old playbook, where you actually go around and try to get campaign votes. And you're trying to get as many as you possibly can in as many states. And woe and behold, it worked. He didn't create a new campaign. He just basically took out an old one and dusted it off and said, we'll try this. And it worked. Because those arrogant people for 3 decades thought they had us under control. And they forgot it only takes one person to not play the game before all of it breaks apart. That's what happened.